Hello everybody and welcome to My Favourite Board Games, a new monthly Patreon exclusive for a little while series in which I talk about, wait for it, my favourite board games because I like board games a whole lot and part of my career I spent talking about them, so I thought, well, if I'm going to do a Patreon, I really ought to honour that as well. So we're going to start off with genuinely one of my all-time favourites. This is Coup, which is actually a card game, so we've already blown the format straight out of the water. Nonetheless, why have I picked this game? Well, because while I was talking about board games while working at Dicebreaker, this game would come up a lot. We would kind of throw it into conversation, be like, oh, la la la, gateway games like Coup, or la la la, social deduction games like Coup, or la la la, games with sci-fi aesthetics like Coup. But we never actually took the time to cover just that one game and explain why we love it so much. It was always just kind of like it was almost assumed that everyone knew about it and everyone had already played it, so we didn't really need to explain what Coup was. So, to be perfectly honest with you, I picked it because I'm just quite excited about actually talking about this game in detail and explaining what it is. So this is a game for 2 to 6 players. It can increase with an expansion. But it's set in the same world as The Resistance, which, again, is another sort of social deduction game along the same lines as Werewolf or Avalon, if you've played that. So it's set in this kind of futuristic court setting, and you get 2 cards apiece, and these 2 cards represent your lives, or to use the actual parlance of the game, they are your influence at court. If you lose both of these lives, you have to, every time you lose a life, you have to turn it face up. If you lose both of them, you're out of the game. The object of the game is to be the last person standing. So how do you take out other players? Well, there are several methods, and I'll explain them all. But firstly, you should know that in this game, there are little coins. All of them have kind of, I think the currency is called ISK, and on the other side, you've got a little chip and pin chip. You can accrue these coins on your turn, and if you ever reach 7, you can do what's called... Did I pick up 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Oh my god, I picked up 7 just coincidentally. If you ever get 7 coins, you can start a coup, at which point you say, I'm going to coup you, and someone has to eliminate one of their cards. There are other ways to take out other players, and there is a handy cheat sheet provided in the box. But before I talk about exactly how to take out other players, let's just run through the different characters in the deck, because there are 5 different characters in a game of Coup. I'm just going to get all of these out now. Okay, so let's start with the Duke, or the card absolutely everyone pretends they have on their first turn. When you're the Duke, you can take 3 coins from what's called the treasury, basically the money pile in the middle of the table. Everyone starts with 2 coins in a game of Coup, so if on your first turn you take 3, 5 is pretty close to the magic number 7 to coup people. So this is an amazing sort of like financial powerhouse card that lets you just basically fast track your way to cooing people out of the game. Unfortunately, however, you have to look out for the captain. The captain can take 2 coins from another player. Basically, stealing is the action. And the Duke, on their own, has no defense against this. If you want to block stealing, you either have to have a captain yourself, or you need to have a different card called the Ambassador, which I'll explain next. So the captain, generally very useful at hindering other players and making enemies of them, and also protecting yourself from being, from having your own stash raided. The Ambassador is another card that can also block stealing, but the interesting thing about the Ambassador is that they can do what's called exchanging cards with the court deck. Basically, you can use the Ambassador if you don't like the cards you have in your hand and you want some new ones, or if you just want a peek at the draw pile, the court deck, to see what cards are in there and what cards therefore are less abundant among the other players. So if you're using the Ambassador, you draw 2 cards from the deck, you look at all of your cards, and you shuffle 2 cards back into the deck. So you don't even have to swap cards if you don't want to, it's up to you, but it does give you the chance to basically freshen up your hand and get a better start. After that, we have the Assassin, basically Lady Gaga. The Assassin doesn't even need to wait for 7 coins in order to try and take somebody out, because with just 3 coins, they can try and assassinate somebody. Whether you're successful or not, you have to pay the 3 coins, so it's always a bit of a risk. And you may be wondering, but hang on, it's an assassin. How can an assassination attempt not be successful in Coup? This is the final character card. It's called the Contessa, and the Contessa's only ability is to block assassinations. The Contessa doesn't draw coins, the Contessa doesn't steal from others, or, change cards of the deck, or block stealing, only blocks assassination. The only card that can, so it can be a real lifeline. So, those are all the characters, and you're familiar with the concept of cooing somebody. What happens on a go? Well, in a game of Coup, on your turn, you've got both of your cards face down in front of you. You can take one action. You can either take 1 coin, which is called income, and nobody can stop you doing this. You can take foreign aid, which gives you 2 coins. However, if anybody has a Duke card, they can say, I'm going to block that with my Duke, and you don't get the cards. Or you can coup somebody by paying 7 coins. Or you can do whatever it is one of your characters says. So if you have a Duke, you can take 3 coins. If you have an assassin, you can pay 3 coins to try and assassinate somebody, and so on and so forth. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all of the cards are played face down in a game of Coup, and if you lose a life, you have to reveal it. There are 3 copies of every single card in the deck to make a total of 15 cards in the deck. And on your turn, you can claim to have whatever character you like. You remember I said that everyone pretends to have a Duke on the first turn? That's because in the first turn, nobody really knows what anyone else has, because no cards have been eliminated. So you can only go off what 2 cards you have in your hand in order to make your first decision. So it's the lowest risk point at which you can go, I've got a Duke, I'm going to take 3 coins. And when you say I've got a Duke and I take 3 coins, there's a pregnant pause, because at this point, everyone else around the table has to decide whether to challenge you or not. Because if they don't believe you have a Duke, they can say, you don't have a Duke. At which point, if I've been told I don't have a Duke, I either reveal my Duke, proving that the other person is wrong, at which point they lose a life for being wrong and making a false accusation, or I admit I don't have a Duke and I flip one of my 2 cards and lose a life myself. So it is a game of social deduction, but it's kind of got a lot more mechanical elements, and there is this kind of central concept of where the money is going and how you're using the money to coup other people. That means it's a social deduction game with more sort of, I don't want to say nuance, because obviously social deduction games are very nuanced and hard to say, but you are just trying to work out who you think is lying and who you trust and who you don't. In a game of Coup, you don't trust anybody, but you are trying to work out for sure what cards they do have so that you can challenge them if they claim to have something else, or if, again, for example, you have excuse me, you have a captain and you're pretty sure another person doesn't have a captain or an ambassador to stop you stealing from them, you can steal from them forever. So the game goes until basically everyone is eliminated apart from 1 player, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely hilarious, because a person can take their go and claim to have a Duke and take 3 coins for the entire thing, only for it to be revealed in the latter stages that they never had a Duke, because all 3 have been revealed around the table, and they've been lying this whole time. And once you work out they've been lying, there's nothing you can do about the previous turns. You have to wait and see if they claim to have a Duke again in order for you to challenge them. And it's absolutely beautiful. And I think where Coup really comes into its own is with the assassination game in particular. Because if somebody says, I'm going to assassinate you, you have 2 choices here if you don't want to just say, all right, and take the assassination. Choice number 1 is saying, I've got a Contessa, so I'm going to block that. at which point the assassinating player has to decide whether or not to say you don't have a Contessa. Or you challenge them straight away and say you don't have an assassin. Either way, if as the person who's being assassinated, you are wrong, so if you're revealed not to have a Contessa because they challenge you, or you challenge them on having an assassin and you get it wrong, you're completely dead, because you lose a card for being wrong and you lose a card for being assassinated. So there's so much risk and reward with assassins as a character, and they're really irritating. Like, especially if someone's lying, to throw 3 coins away and go, I'm going to take out one of your lives. Do you really want to risk the second one? Is such a brilliant feeling. So this game is kind of, it's what people often refer to as a gateway game, because it's pretty simple to pick up. And you can, it's simple to pick up, but there's a lot of strategic depth in there. I'm not going to say it's hard to master. You can absolutely play with the best of them very quickly after just a few rounds of Coup, but there's just something about the back and forth nuance without the agonizing 45-minute game of like, is my best friend lying to me about whether or not they're a werewolf? Because in Coup, they probably are lying to you. Like, everyone is lying in Coup. That's the nice thing. There aren't people pounding their chest and going, no, I really am telling the truth here. If you suspect another person, that's often good for them, you know? So it's less heavyweight in terms of sort of stress and the friendship testing qualities than pure social deduction games like The Resistance, on which this game is based. But also, it's just got nigh on infinite replayability. A game can last up to 15 minutes. It often doesn't take anywhere near that long. And it's, in my opinion, it's an absolute essential in terms of board games. It's one of the very first games I bought, and it's still one of my absolute favourites. Like, oftentimes, if I'm playing with a bunch of friends, the same people I play board games with all the time, we might play a couple of sort of heavyweight things, or, you know, a couple of rounds of a game we really love that takes like 2 hours a go or whatever. And it's getting towards sort of the end of the evening, but we're not ready to stop playing yet. We want to continue talking and maybe have a glass of wine or whatever. And someone will say Coup, and 9 times out of 10, everyone goes, absolutely, yes, let's play Coup. It is just, it's an absolute stonker, and it's very reasonably priced. So if you haven't given it a go, I urge you to, because it really is, wait for it, one of my favourite board games. So there you go, that is Coup. I'm sorry I didn't have sort of bells and whistles B-roll of me playing it with a bunch of friends, but it's hard to get around the table with friends at the minute. And to be honest with you, I've explained this game to people so many times that I was reasonably confident I could just do it while showing you the cards. So yeah, that was the very first episode of my favourite board games. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, there are loads more videos for you to watch on the channel, obviously. You know where to go by now. I'm on Twitter at JOHNNEH, that's John Air. I'm on patreon.com/Johnny Chiodini. But most importantly, if you could give this video a like, that would be very nice, but it's not essential. The most important thing I want you to do is have a lovely day, and to accept my thanks for watching this video. So I will catch you next time. Take care.